I know it sounds weird in the middle of July to say Merry Christmas, but shouldn't we have the Christmas spirit in our heart 365 days a year? Now, whether my message to you was going to turn out to be a sugar plum or a sack of coal, time will tell. I was looking for a way to begin the sermon this morning, and good old Brian Alexander reminded me of an episode of the Andy Griffith Show called The Preacher, and the immortal words of Deputy Sheriff Barney Fife. You can't talk enough about sin. So I'm here today to talk about sin. Every morning, pretty much first thing, I take my dogs out for a walk on Satterfield Road, and in the shadows of Yoda Mountain, it's beautiful, it's peaceful. I have time to reflect, and yeah, I admit I talk to my dogs. My wife claims I talk to my dogs more than I talk to her. At least they don't talk back. And I have a lot of time for reflection, and I talk to myself. And in the message this morning, I am talking to myself as much as I am to you. Did you know it's a sin to be poor? Let that sink in a minute. It's a sin to be poor. Old Scrooge surely thought that way in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And honestly, haven't we at one time or another, in one way or another, haven't we all been guilty of thinking that way? You've probably all seen versions of A Christmas Carol on TV or at the movies or on stage. So I'll just give you a quick synopsis. A Christmas Carol is set in 1843 London, and the main characters are Scrooge, a mean, stingy, odious, hard-hearted, skin-flinted old businessman. His poor, beaten-down clerk, Bob Cratchit. Bob Cratchit's crippled son, Tiny Tim, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas future. Now, the ghost of Christmas future doesn't have a word to say. And after my sermon, you might wish the same could be said of me. But here it goes. Scrooge is leaving his office for the stock exchange, where he is met by two portly gentlemen taking up collections for the poor. Much like the Salvation Army outside Walmart. Many thousands are in want of common necessities. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comfort, sir. Scrooge. Are there no prisons? Plenty of prisons. The treadmill and the poor law are in full vigor then. Both very busy, sir. Scrooge. Oh, I was afraid from what you had said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. Then they asked him, what shall I put you down for? Nothing. He didn't have a pew to him. Whatever. I wish to be left alone. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned, and those who are badly off must go there. But many can't go there, and many would rather die. If they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Whew. Have you ever said something and just as soon as it gets out of your mouth, you wish you could reach up and grab it and stuff it back down your throat? I know I have. And Scrooge will wish he could have. His words come back to haunt him when the ghost of Christmas present takes him to see Bob Cratchit's humble house and their humble Christmas feast, where the crippled Tiny Tim is clearly dying. Touched, Scrooge asks the ghost if Tiny Tim will live to see another Christmas. The words of the ghost of Christmas present. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race will find him here. But if he had be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Man, if man you be in heart, forbear that wicked talk until you have discovered what the surplus is and where it is. It may be that in the sight of heaven you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child. It's not just Scrooge who is on trial here, but you, me, all of us. And the sin is not poverty or being oppressed, orphaned, widowed, imprisoned, broken, whatever. The sin is our deafness to hearing the cry of the needy. And if England in 1843 are hard to grasp, Afghanistan, in the wake of the war and persecution, mothers are having to sell their babies. There's one mother who's faced with the choice of, should I sell one baby that the other could survive? And which one do you choose? In the Ukraine, over 3 million have fled to the surrounding countries as the Russian armies invade the country. But again, closer to home, my brother-in-law's family. There is a picture he has of his possibly great-grandparents that shows the widowed mother with 9 children out in front of their house, and they're pictures of them in the cotton mill where all but the baby work. The cotton mill was in Cordele, Georgia, and the widowed mother could not afford to keep the children, so she had to give 7 of the 9 away. Some of them never forgave her, but they survived. Now, nowhere, anywhere between Genesis and Revelation, in any version of the Bible, anywhere, will you find that poverty is a sin. Where you will find it, perhaps not in so many words, is in the so-called prosperity gospel. And to be honest, in what I know I was, probably we all were sometimes brought to believe, what society tells us and what has been said in the past, even from the pulpit, which boil down to the basics is this: somehow we deserve what we have, for better or worse. But I'm here to tell you that the Bible and Jesus Christ never said any such thing. In fact, there are over 2,000 verses in the Bible repeatedly reminding us of our duty to the poor, the widows, the orphans, the foreigners, to the helpless and the marginalized of society. God has not forgotten the poor, nor should we. True, in many cases, the poor aren't as easy to love as with a poor, crippled, blind-headed little tiny Tim. But Jesus doesn't qualify who the poor and oppressed are. So can we. It's not the poor that Jesus is talking about in the parable of the rich young ruler. A man who had obeyed all the commandments, who clearly wanted to follow Jesus, but who had not done the one thing that Jesus asked: sell all your possessions and give them to the poor. Nor have I. Does that mean I have the chance of a camel in a needle's eye of going to the kingdom of heaven? In Matthew chapter 5, verse 24, Jesus cries out, "But woe to you rich, for you have received your consolation." In the Beatitudes, Matthew 5, verses 1 through 5, and seeing the multitudes, Jesus went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And in Luke chapter 4, verses 16 through 19, Jesus is in the synagogue of Nazareth where he reads from the book of Isaiah and applies these words to himself. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Have you ever wondered, I know I have, if Jesus came back to this world today, where do you think we'd find him? If you consider that Jesus spent much of his ministry among the poor, the sick, the beggars, the lepers, the outcasts of society. And Luke 5:31 through 32 has Jesus saying, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." You know what I think? If he came back today, I suspect, as distasteful as it might seem to us, that Jesus would not be found in a church, but ministering in the welfare lines, the slums, housing projects, prisons, down among the dock workers, in migrant labor camps, wherever. No, I know we don't have most of those things in White County. What we do have is, Todd Marks reminded me, is more homeless than you realize, than you would want to realize. In Family Promise, I have seen men get up at 4 a.m., trudge off to the poultry plants, and sometime after dark come home dead tired, covered in chicken blood and chicken guts, only to have to do it all over again and again and again. Yet when they graduate from Family Promise, there is no affordable housing available in White County. What then? Where do they go? I wish I had the answers. I don't. I know, individually and collectively, many of you are helping with Mildred's Thrift Store, through the food bank, Family Promise, Caring and Sharing, Habitat for Humanity, Food for the Hungry, Samaritan's Purse, and in other ways. But Deborah and I were talking about this yesterday, and the problem of poverty in the world today is so complex and so hard to wrap your hands around that it's a lot easier to just tell ourselves that if the poor and oppressed worked harder, if they made good choices, if they did this or did that, or didn't do this or didn't do that they'd be okay. But destructive habits, drugs, dysfunctional families, repeated patterns of relying on government assistance that penalize more than they help, the basic nature of change in our economy, and so many things that no one can help, these are to blame. And when we turn a blind eye or a deaf ear to their cries, we too are to blame. Jesus and the prophets throughout the Old and New Testament repeatedly call on us to help. James chapter 2, verse 5. Listen, my dear brothers and sisters, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised to those who love him? Proverbs 19, verse 1. It's a verse that Scrooge could have profit from. Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with the princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. But our duty may be best summed up by Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow. Honestly, I don't know how we can solve the problem. And remember what Jesus said, the poor will be with us always. And there are even times when our helping hurts, when perhaps the hardest thing to do, but most effective, is to teach them to help themselves. When? How? Again, I just don't know. An old Chinese proverb says, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Before we go, remember Proverbs 21, verse 13. Those who shut their ears to the cry of the poor will be ignored in their own time of need. Again, those who shut their ears to the cries of the poor will be ignored in their own time of need. Brothers and sisters, we are the hands and feet of Christ. No, we can't change institutions. We can't change economies. We can't change the past. But we can, one-on-one, help change lives. So who are we going to be more like? Scrooge or Jesus Christ? And to quote Tiny Tim, who, by the way, did not die. God bless us, everyone. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for giving me the Spirit and the words to say what I hope will help someone, to help someone else in your name. Forgive me for turning a deaf ear and a blind eye to the cry of the needy. And help us reach outside the walls of this church to bring your words and your love to a world that so desperately needs them now more than ever. Amen.